Hi, welcome to Chard Review. After returning from a trip to the quantum realm, he must help his girlfriend save her mother who has been trapped in another universe for 30 years. Today we will recap the story of the 2018 movie Ant-Man and the Wasp. Hope was just a little girl when she saw her parents leaving home for a business trip for the last time. Janet, her mother, asks the nanny to look after the girl while she and her husband Hank are away. What Hope didn't realize was that her parents were superheroes and were given the difficult mission of disarming a missile that would blow up the entire city. However, in order to disarm it, the couple would have to get inside, and the coating was very dense. Therefore, one of the two would have to shrink to the point of being able to pass between the molecules. They both knew that if someone shrunk that much, they would never be able to get back since Hank's regulator was damaged. Janet decided to do the work, and her heroic act saved thousands of lives that day. She did this knowing that she would be alone, lost in the quantum realm forever. Telling Hope that her mother would no longer be coming home was the hardest thing Hank had to do. However, when Scott, the new Ant-Man, showed up and after making a brief visit to the quantum realm managed to return, Hank began to wonder if Janet is still alive, so he revisited some old projects and started to build the quantum tunnel. In this way, the scientists believe it is possible to bring her back 30 years after the incident. Scott tries to have fun with his daughter while under house arrest. Together, they explore a tunnel made of cardboard where a giant ant lives. At the end of the tunnel, they find a safe, and after opening it, they spot a valuable trophy that Cassie gave her father for his birthday. The girl wants to take the object to present at school, but her father says that the trophy cannot leave that house because it is the most valuable gift he has ever received. After accomplishing the mission, the duo escapes. The toy ant down the slide and ends up in the garden. At this point, Luis informs them that he is heading to the office of the company he owns in partnership with Scott. However, since the man has been under house arrest for 2 years, he has been spending his vacation days always looking for something new to do. During the fall in the garden, Scott's foot ends up piercing the wooden fence and his anklet starts beeping. There are only 3 days left before he gets his freedom back, but FBI agent Jimmy Woo goes to his house to find out what happened. Scott tries to explain that it was all just an accident. However, Jimmy makes a point of reminding him that after house arrest, Scott will still be on probation for 3 years. If in that time he associates with anyone who has also violated the Treaty of Segovia, such as Hope Van Dyne and Hank Pym, he could get up to 20 years in jail. Minutes later, Maggie, Cassie's mother, and her husband Paxton show up to take the little girl back home. Despite Scott's messed up life, the couple manages to maintain a good relationship with him and cares about his well-being after being stuck at home for so long. Scott has managed to perfect some magic tricks and doesn't hesitate to use them to make his daughter smile. Now that he is alone again, the man looks for something to pass the time, waiting for the next 3 days to come to an end. After having fun and solving some pending issues in his company, the man goes to take a shower to relax and ends up falling asleep. During his sleep, he dreams that he is back in the quantum realm, and then his mind is transported to a room. He walks over to a red closet with stickers taped to the door and finds a child inside looking in the mirror. He realizes that he is in Janet's. Buddy Scott wakes up scared and decides to call Hank Pym to explain what happened. Since the man doesn't answer the phone, Scott leaves a voice message telling him about his dream. He then regrets making the call and breaks his cell phone in half. The next morning, while eating his cereal, Scott gets a sting on his neck and passes out. When he wakes up, he is in a car next to Hope. When he realizes what has happened, he despairs for he should be at home doing his time. The situation becomes even more macabre when he sees giant pigeons outside the vehicle and realizes that the body has shrunk. Hope tries to reassure him, saying that she left a friend at home in his place with the anklet. This way, the policeman will not suspect anything. Minutes later, the pair arrive at their final destination and enter an old building that was apparently abandoned. However, when they arrive at the laboratory, Scott discovers that there are several creatures living and working there. Upon meeting Hank, the man tries to apologize, but the scientist ignores him. Hope explains that he was brought there to help them find his mother. She and her father have built a tunnel that leads directly into the quantum realm, and she believes that what Scott saw was not just a dream, but Janet trying to send a message. All that is missing to start a rescue mission is a piece of equipment capable of generating enough power to keep the portal open. Despite his fear of being caught and spending the rest of his life in jail, Scott agrees to help them get the piece and is surprised to discover that in addition to the vehicles that stay in a diminutive size, the building where they live is also portable. When they arrive at the meeting place where Hope has arranged to buy the piece, she gets out of the van and enters the building while Scott and Hank wait outside. Sonny Birch sells technology on the illegal market and has gotten the quantum technology they need, but in return he wants to buy the lab for $1 billion. Since the woman refuses to do business with him, Sonny states that he will not deliver the piece to her and steals her money. Furious Pope pretends to leave, but soon returns with her wasp costume and eliminates all the guys who tried to stop her from achieving her goal. The woman uses her quantum rays to increase the size of the objects and prevent Osman, one of Sonny's henchmen, from escaping with the piece after getting rid of the smugglers. Hope takes her bag of money back and gives it to her supplier as payment for the power generator. However, just as she was about to cross the door, she comes face to face with a mysterious creature that tries to steal the piece from her hands. Her enemy, who possesses the ability to disappear like a ghost, is determined to take that device no matter what the cost. Therefore, Scott decides to help her. Hank hands him an experimental suit, which is still in development, and asks the man to be careful. Just as Hope is about to lose the battle, Scott appears and kicks his opponent. However, the ghost soon disappears. Taking the piece along with him, the creature goes to the van and threatens Hank to get the lab. By the time the couple reaches the vehicle, it is too late, as the villain has already fled. With nowhere else to go, the trio decides to stop by Scott's company headquarters in order to devise a plan to recover what has been lost. After exchanging an idea with Louise and Scott's other co-workers, Hope has the idea of tracking the radiation emitted by the lab. However, they don't have any equipment to do this, and Hank decides to ask an old colleague. He used to work with at S.H.I.E.L.D. Bill Foster for help. Meanwhile, when she arrives home, Ava Starr removes her ghostly costume and enters the chamber in an attempt to use the quantum rays to stabilize the molecules in her body. Hours later, the trio goes to the university, where Bill works as a professor and breaks into his class. Upon seeing his former co-worker, the man dismisses the students and invites them into his classroom. Bill claims not to have the technology they need, and Scott spots some FBI agents through the window. The trio escapes, and Hank claims that she had the old Ant-Man costume which Scott wore while in Germany. He could track down the lab. Upon hearing this, the man confesses that he still has the costume even after swearing that he had destroyed it. Immediately, Scott calls Louise and asks about the trophy he got as a gift from his daughter, because that is where he hides the costume. However, his friend claims that the object is not there, and Scott soon suspects that Cassie has taken the trophy to school. So Ant-Man and the Wasp sneak into the school and fly through the halls when the regulator in Scott's new suit starts to malfunction. He then changed his size and has to hide from the children who come out for recess. Hiding in the pantry, the hero ends up growing larger than he would like, then Hope decides to help him. After fixing the regulator, the man returns to normal, but soon shrinks again and is mistaken for a child by one of the teachers. After walking down the entire hallway, Scott finally finds Cassie's room and manages to retrieve the costume that was hidden in the trophy. The pair then return to the van and Hank manages to track down the lab. Upon entering there, Scott and Hope come across the ghosts. Costume and spot Ava sleeping inside the chamber. They intend to recover the laboratory before the girl wakes up, but end up being surprised and captured. When he wakes up, Scott notices that he is tied up next to Hope and Hank. Suddenly, Ava appears and blames the old man for what happened to her. Hank tries to understand what the young woman is talking about, and Bill arrives to explain the situation. Elias Starr was another of Hank's co-workers during his time at S.H.I.E.L.D. However, when the two came into disagreement regarding the direction of the research they were doing, Hank fired him. After that, Elias tried to continue his research alone, but something went wrong. The man ordered Ava and her mother to run away, but the girl did not want to leave her father alone and ran back to him. At that moment the reactor exploded, and when the firemen arrived, Ava's parents were dead. The girl was not so lucky and had to carry that burden for her whole life. Every cell in her body shatters and rebuilds all the time without stopping. When Ava was in the orphanage, Bill learned about her anomaly and decided to go to her to try to help her after that. S.H.I.E.L.D. scientists captured her and ran hundreds of tests on her. They gave Ava a containment suit so she could control her abilities and turned her into a war machine. They promised to cure her, but that never happened. When S.H.I.E.L.D. was destroyed, Bill took Ava in as his daughter and has been trying to help her ever since. During the conversation, Scott receives an urgent call from Cassie and finds out that she called to ask about her soccer shoes. Maggie then takes out her cell phone to ask Scott to look for the girl's sneakers and then return to her when Bill hangs up the call he claims to have. Plan to cure Ava. He says that he intends to extract the quantum energy that Janet has been absorbing all these years and use it to save the young girl. Upon hearing this, Hank goes into despair, for he knows that this extraction process could endanger his wife's life. Nervous about the situation, the man begins to have a heart attack, and Hope asks Bill to give him the pills that are inside a small box. However, upon opening the object, Bill realizes that it was all just a trap as giant ants swarm out of it and set the trio free. The creatures then attack Ava and Bill while they're allies. Escape with the laboratory. Now, with the missing piece in hand, they prepare the quantum tunnel to locate Janet. Just then, Scott receives a call from Louis in which his partner asks him to come to the company to help solve a problem. Since Scott claims he cannot leave where he is, Louis asks his location and says he will find him. Just as the man is about to leave the office, Sonny shows up and uses the trio as hostages to find out where Scott is. Louis refuses to reveal his friend's location, so the criminal introduces Usman, who is a master at extracting information from people through truth serum in his hiding place. Bill reveals that without the lab's resources, the young girl has no more than 2 weeks to live. Overcome with despair, Ava plans to capture Scott's daughter and use her as a bargaining chip to take back the lab, but Bill forbids her to do so. As a result, the young woman decides to follow through with Plan A and go after Janet under the effect of the substance. After telling a long story about how he met Scott, Louise ends up revealing the whereabouts of his friend and is surprised to discover that Ava was there the whole time. Listening to the conversation immediately, she runs into Hank and destroys Sonny's tires in an attempt to prevent the young woman from getting the lab. The criminal calls his police colleague and informs him where the trio of outlaws is. In exchange for this inside information, he charges a small favor in the laboratory. Hope and her father begin the tunnel opening activity. However, their plan does not work. Suddenly, Scott says that he needs to fix the algorithm, and Hank realizes that it is Janet who is running the man's body after making all the adjustments. The woman is able to trace her own signal and is able to decipher the origin. She states that the portal will be open for 2 hours and Hank needs to pick her up at exactly those coordinates. Then Scott regains consciousness and receives a call from Louise in which he is informed that the FBI knows his location. Upon hearing this, the man breaks the news to the scientists and Hope, along with her father, prepares to get the hell out of there while Scott rushes home so that Jimmy doesn't find out that he violated his house arrest. Just then, Cassie and her mother arrive at Scott's apartment. They're there to get the girl's tennis shoes, and she goes into the bedroom to look for her father. Once there, she finds a giant ant taking a bath and is excited by the animal's presence. Then Jimmy and his agents break into the house and Cassie tries to stop him from going upstairs, saying that her father is sick. Seconds later, the agent manages to evade her and is surprised to see Scott coming out of the bathroom. When Hank and Hope leave the lab, they realize that the cops are already there waiting for them, and the pair is arrested while father and daughter are being taken to the car. One of the policemen steals the lab to give it to Sonny. However, before he could close the trunk of the car, Ava shows up and knocks the guy out. She then steals the portable building. Upon learning about the scientist's arrest, Cassie manages to convince her father to save them and says that he can do anything in the interrogation room. While waiting for Officer Jimmy to arrive, Hope removes a staple from her mouth and uses the accessory to open the handcuffs. She plans to shrink the wall to escape with her father, but Scott shows up just in time to rescue them after donning her wasp costume. Hope shrinks in size and manages to slip through the bars. She then unlocks the door so that her father can escape using an FBI agent disguise. As they leave, father and daughter get into the van and the trio continues their mission. What they didn't know is that Usman was on the prowl and starts chasing them. After losing the lab for the first time, Hank reveals that he has put a new tracker on it and uses a cloud of flying ants to show the way. When they find the building, Louise shows up to help with the mission and Scott asks his friend to stay in the van with Hope while he and Hank enter the building. The duo uses the ants as a distraction so Hank can get his suit and board the ship to go through the quantum tunnel. The scientist assures Bill that he will help Ava find the cure when he returns. Meanwhile, Ava goes after Scott and he distracts her while the rest of the team completes the mission. As Hank goes through the tunnel, Louise grabs the lab and Hope drives away. During her escape, the woman encounters Sonny and must change her route in order to escape. While driving, Hope changes the size of her vehicle several times and manages to get away from her pursuers, causing serious accidents. As soon as he arrives in the cosmic realm, Hank runs into several tardigrades that try to devour him, but he manages to escape and quickly sets off in the direction of Janet's signal. While Hope tries to get rid of her enemies, Ava appears and steals a motorcycle to pursue them. She uses her powers to go through the windshield of the van and pushes Hope out. She then manages to take the lab and escape in a truck. Hope goes after her and with Scott's help, manages to get the building back. However, soon after, Sonny manages to get his dirty hands on it. An escape while the Wasp goes after the smuggler, Scott faces problems with the regulator on his suit and ends up overgrowing it. He then uses his truck as a skateboard to go help his friend. After a long journey, Hank finally arrives at the location indicated by the coordinates and after experiencing an episode of hallucination, finds his beloved wife, whom he has not seen for 30 years, together. They return to the ship on their way home in an attempt to retrieve the lab. Scott destroys the vehicle Sonny is in, but the demented man manages to escape. Ant-Man then needs to go after him and realizes that the thief has hitched a ride on a ship that has just left the dock. After a few tries, Scott manages to shrink and calls one of the flying ants to help him reach the ship. However, during the flight he is chased by a seagull and must jump into the sea to avoid being devoured. Suddenly, the hero appears at the side of the ship in a gigantic size and after delivering the laboratory to his friends, Scott falls asleep as his excessive size sucks all his energy. At that moment, Hope asks Louise to take the building while she dives in to save Ant-Man. Just as Louise was about to reach for his suitcase, Eva shows up and manages to grab the remote control to increase the size of the lab. After helping Scott return to his original size, Hope carries him out of the water. Minutes later, Bill arrives on the scene and enters the lab looking for Ava. He tries to stop her from continuing her plan, as he believes Janet may die in the process. However, the young woman throws him away and states that she will do whatever it takes to heal herself. Janet is still inside the ship when her energy begins to be sucked out, but Scott manages to stop Eva from continuing the extraction process. Furious, the young woman tries to destroy him, but is no match for defeating Ant-Man and the Wasp together. When the ship invades the lab, Scott manages to keep Hope from being crushed, and the woman feels extremely relieved to see her mother again. Now, after 3 decades, she has her family reunited again after being run over by the ship. Ava wakes up frightened and Janet offers her help. The woman claims that she can feel the girl's pain, and after touching her head, she is able to remove all the burdens. Is carrying returning her body to normal? Just then, Luis enters the lab and reveals that the police are coming. When the feds approach Kurt and Dave, they discovered that the pair helped arrest Sonny and his gang and used the truth serum to get them to confess their crimes. When Jimmy is arriving on the scene, he meets Ant-Man on the way and tries to arrest him, but soon discovers that he has been tricked, for that was just the hero's costume. Looking at the lab, the agent realizes that the building has also shrunk and runs to Scott's apartment even after all that has happened. Bill remains by Ava's side and they both run away together. Just then the FBI raids Scott's house and Jimmy is disappointed to see his main target playing drums without a care in the world. Once again, he has been tricked by Ant-Man. This is Scott's last day under house arrest and he now has his anklet removed to enjoy his next 3 years on parole. The first thing he does when he gets his freedom back is to go out with his daughter. In the following months, his company grows faster than Ant-Man himself and his team manages to close deals with several important clients. Hank and Janet moved into a house on the beachfront and together they strive to make up for lost years. Eventually, Hope and Scott began a romantic relationship and together with Cassie, watch a movie in their home garden inside a mini car while being attacked by a moth. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below, and if you like the video, please like and subscribe for more movie review. See you next time. He was captured by many of the Emperor's soldiers and overthrown. Finally, he succeeded in everything in life. Chard review.